And welcome to the Mike McGavel Jones Show at the intersection of the LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway. We welcome you to another episode. We're glad to have you on today. A lot of action going on in Dallas right now. We just had a little tornado action last night. In fact, just blocks from here, probably within 3 or 4 blocks. And so there's a lot of activity going on around in the North Dallas area. People scrambling. And according to what I understand, we didn't even have a fatality in this, or at least we are not aware of one yet. So that's a miracle, considering all the damage that we've seen across the North Texas area from around the I-35 corridor over to Richardson. So we want to send our thoughts and prayers out to everyone who got caught up in this and had damage to their homes and their businesses and interruption in their lives. So we'll be thinking about those folks over the coming days. Today's show, I'd like to welcome Shonda Schaefer. She is executive director of a group called Grace, and Grace is located in Grapevine, Texas. And welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. We're going to have a conversation about a lot of different things. Okay, Grace is a special group to me because it's one of the fundraising benefit opportunities that I have where I can actually see the benefits of what they're doing. A lot of times you're doing a benefit auction or a fundraising auction and you're not that close to the group. They just have you come in and you don't actually see what's going on. But why don't you tell us a little bit about Grace and kind of what the mission is?
Sure. Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having us here. Grace is located in Grapevine, as you mentioned. We're about 35 years old. The organization was started as a collaboration of churches that were all trying to help families that were in some type of financial crisis. Several of them were homeless, families that were living out at Lake Grapevine because they couldn't afford housing. And so they would come to the churches looking for food or clothing, and each church was able to meet a particular need, but none of them were able to meet all of the needs. So they collaborated, pulled all their resources together, different denominations, different churches in the area, and created the organization called Grace. So in the early days, it was really about food and clothing, but over the years, of course, the Grapevine area has changed considerably, but the financial needs started to become a little bit different. So we created programs around the needs of the community. We now have a full self-serve, self-selection food pantry, just like a little grocery store, that serves not just to get food into the hands of people who need it, but also there's an educational component on budgeting and planning meals and healthy eating, so we kind of revolve all of that. We found that there was a lot of people suffering in a financial crisis due to a medical illness, medical bills that had stacked up, or just access to care. So we rallied some volunteer physicians and created the Grace Medical Clinic. It's the only completely free, privately funded charitable medical clinic in our area for families who are either uninsured or underinsured. Mm-hmm. We also found that there were several families that had experienced homelessness, and they had made their way to an emergency shelter, but once they were ready to leave that, were not quite ready to be self-sufficient. So we created a program called Transitional Housing. Most of our families are single women with small children coming from a domestic violence background. So their issues are not just putting a roof over their head. It's about how do we get self-sufficient? How do I heal from the damage that was done? And how do I set myself on a path for self-sufficiency? So it's a pretty intense 2-year case management program, and we have seen phenomenal results, better than the national averages. National averages are about 50%, so only 1 in 2 people actually get self-sufficient, but in our program it's about 85%, and it's very community-based.
I notice you also have it's like a surplus, not a surplus, but like a store.
We do.
What do you call that?
We have Graceful Buys resale, and that is a big part of how we fund our programs. About 20% of our programs come from our resale operation.
Now, that is located on the
We
highway.
actually have 3 stores.
You do?
You do.
I passed one the other day,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, we have one in kind of North Grapevine off of Northwest Highway.
Mm-hmm.
We have one that's called Style and Grace, which is a women's boutique. We get some phenomenal tags still on women's clothing. So we have a boutique at Gladen 121,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have another Graceful Buys in Euless off of Highway 10 and 157.
So you just moved into a new office recently. I don't know. When did that happen?
We moved in at the end of last calendar year, so almost a year ago.
So after our last event, of course, we had a meeting earlier this week.
Yes.
Actually, it was this week.
Yeah.
Or last week.
Yeah.
And but I noticed it's almost like you have an entire complex started.
That's exactly it.
So you've got the pantry there. And what was really cool when I was parking and when I came back out to my vehicle, there were some senior ladies they had gotten food, and you could just the demeanor
Yeah.
of these women, they were so excited to be able to have these things and be able to not have to worry about getting them.
Yeah.
It was an interesting dynamic, because I just kind of read the body language, and because people forget how hard it is for seniors today to live on the incomes that they receive, which in some cases is almost nothing, and which is pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
But anyway, I won't get political. I tend to do that sometimes. But anyway, that was very enlightening, and the buildings are very nice and very clean, and the grounds are very nice and very clean, and then your offices have a nice conference room where you can gather and meet. It's a much nicer location than your other one.
Yes.
But the other one, served its purpose, for its time. But it was really great to see you. You like to see things progress.
Yeah.
I've been involved with Grace. How long have I been involved with Grace?
Oh gosh, Mike, this is probably the 6th or 7th year.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been some great sponsors, and I've had a lot of friends that have been involved with Grace. The Thompson Motor Group over there. They've been great supporters in the past, and have included you guys in their charitable works, and I've been involved in their golf tournament, and I get my vehicles serviced there. And so I try to support anytime there's a sponsor that's involved, and I don't even know who all our sponsors are this year. You want to? We'll talk about the event in a little bit. I want to kind of redirect for just a minute. I want to talk about you, and because anytime someone comes on this show, I'm interested in the people that are behind that make things happen, or who motivate other people to make things happen, because that's leadership, and leadership matters no matter what organization. And I highlight that all the time, whether it's our company or a 501c3 or whatever. So let's talk about you for a second. So where were you born?
I was born in Iowa. I'm a good old farm girl.
Iowa.
Yeah, but I got to Texas as soon as I could.
Yeah, that's the standard line. So what part of Iowa?
I grew up right in the middle in Marshalltown, Iowa. Went to school at Iowa State. Met my husband there. We lived in Des Moines for a little bit, and it's awfully cold in the winters up there. So it was as quick as we could get down here to raise our family in the warmer weather.
I've experienced that quite a bit in Iowa and Nebraska and Minnesota and Wisconsin. I didn't really know what cold was, but I know what cold is now. And I try to avoid it as much as possible. So when you were growing up, what was your family life like?
It was just June Cleaver. I had a wonderful upbringing, small town in Iowa. But, the one thing that my parents did was anytime we would, complain or say, we don't get this, and why doesn't somebody do something about this issue? Why doesn't somebody do something? My parents' standard response was, are you not somebody? So it truly was at a very young age that my parents insisted that me and my siblings were all responsible for our surroundings. We were talking about small things like, why doesn't somebody shovel the snow off the street? Well, here's a shovel, you're somebody. So it really was about being a part of, and it was a wonderful place to grow up. I have very, very fond memories and a beautiful childhood. but it was never far from thought that we were expected to be somebody who is going to do something for someone else.
That's good. I like that. So what did your father do for a living?
You know, back in the 70s, my father started a computer company. So if you stop for a minute and think about no computers,
Right.
with the old punch cards, it was Specialty Computer Services. He created it ground up and ran that out of Littletown, Iowa, and was really, in my opinion, quite a visionary for the time.
Pretty inspiring. And your mother was June Cleaver?
My mother was June Cleaver. She stayed home with us. That didn't mean she didn't work. She was a very hard worker. In fact, over the summers, we spent our summers in the cornfields in Iowa detasseling. You may not know what that is, but it's an important thing, and we spent many hours in the cornfields.
We used to grow corn.
Yeah.
You know, I lived on a dairy north of here
yeah.
back in the 60s. And, you know, most of the food that we had at that time, and it was a shorter period of time. It's not like I lived on the farm for 25 years, but it was the most impressive for my mind. The things that I remember the most about my childhood were learned on that farm.
Yeah.
And I just remember, and my mother had remarried, and so we ended up on this dairy farm, which it was foreign to me, but I was little, and so I got those formative years. We did the corn, and we did, you know, the peas, and, you know, there was everything came from the farm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it all came. In fact, since we were dairy, we didn't have to go to town to get milk. So
Right.
I mean, they might go to the store maybe once a week, but it's usually like every 2 weeks. And there were a lot of grandkids, and it was one of those lifestyles where they would always have Sunday dinner. It was just like the Waltons.
Yeah.
I mean, just exactly like it. And so all the families would come together and eat at the grandmother's house. The kids were eating off of TV trays, and if you didn't get in and get some, you weren't going to get any. I'm just telling you.
And what would you do today to get those farm fresh vegetables
Sure.
and, you know, dairy and even, you know, beef? Gosh, Iowa corn-fed beef was phenomenal. And at the time, it was like, I want McDonald's, you know, what I wouldn't do to go back there.
Well, back in my time, they didn't even have McDonald's. You know, we're talking the dilly dip, and yeah, I think we had one Dairy Queen, and it was about the size of this room.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little bitty, just a little speaker. You know, But anyway, so you had a great childhood. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
I did. I've got a brother. Actually, we all moved down here. I've got a brother out in Frisco and a sister in Euless. So we all got out of the cold.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's happened in most of the small towns.
Yeah.
You know, it's been kind of the demise of the small town.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's trying to make a living. And,
Yeah.
and the other thing is, parents for years, especially in the 60s and 70s, their goal, their mindset was, we're going to get you an education so you can go somewhere and have a better life.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was it.
It was quite a gift.
So you get here after graduating from Iowa State, and what's the first job you took?
You know, I was with the YWCA in Dallas for many years. I went from running a branch in Irving through basically vice president of programs in the YWCA, and I learned a lot about how to run a nonprofit. You know, back in my day, you didn't get a degree in nonprofit management. There was no such thing. Social work, maybe, but there really wasn't a business degree. So I really had to learn kind of growing up, and I had some phenomenal mentors doing that. At the same time, we were starting our family in Grapevine, and my oldest son was going off to kindergarten. And of course, as a working mom, I had to find a way to be a part of. So I started with the PTA being the liaison to this small organization in Grapevine called Grace. So I was back when my oldest was in kindergarten. We were doing food drives and clothing drives, and so even though I was working in a nonprofit in Dallas, I was volunteering and staying connected to my community.
So Grace was how old when you joined, do you think?
Well, goodness, that would have been about 15 years, about 10 years old at the time. Yeah.
So you're responsible for a lot of things, and when we try to schedule meetings, you're a busy woman, you know. And so between my schedule, which is crazy, and your schedule, which is crazy, we try to at least cancel 4 meetings before we actually meet. But you're involved in strategic planning and fundraising and the community relations and board development and staff development people don't realize, I do realize because of the number of fundraising and benefit auctions that I do, I understand it, but a lot of people don't. It's like it's literally running a business.
Yeah.
You're running a business, but you're running all the departments and leading other people to do what they're supposed to be doing. How many people do we have working at Grace?
We've got about 60 employees.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, it's, you hear a lot of times we should run nonprofits like business, and I kind of roll my eyes at that because of course we do. I mean, there's a different and uniqueness about nonprofit businesses as opposed to for-profit, but we've got a $7 million annual budget, and capital campaigns and activities. So yeah, and we don't have a widget to sell necessarily, but we do have work that needs to be done. So we run it like a business, and there's a lot of really good practices out there that we abide by.
So I'm familiar with many of the groups that you're involved in, the United Way, I'm sure, Northeast Tarrant County. Of course, I've done some auctions for United Way over the years. In fact, our COO of our company, United Real Estate, he was the United Way chair for New Orleans and southeastern Louisiana, which is a pretty big project. Yeah. And but he's very philanthropic. He's only been with us for about 9 months, maybe 10 months. And when he came on, he knew what all I did, all these fundraising things. And I said, we'll have to get you involved in some of these events. He said, well, just give me a year. Because you know how it is.
Yeah.
Once they suck you in.
Yep. If you're in, you're in.
You're in.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the upcoming event we have. So let's talk about that.
Sure.
All
yeah.
Right. So what is our theme? Do we have a theme?
This year we're really focusing on black and white and the angels that are among us. Mm-hmm. So we're talking a lot about people in our community, whether it be sponsors, donors, volunteers, or families who are working their way towards self-sufficiency. We really, if you look closely, we're just all surrounded by angels. And so we wanted to take this year's gala to really focus on that.
We call it the Grace Gala.
Yeah.
And we do this at the Gaylord, and we've had other venues, but we were at the Gaylord last year, mm-hmm. and we're back again this year. Tell me how many people are involved in organizing that event.
Oh my goodness, we
I've got to tell you, I'll interrupt you just a minute. The first time I did this event, and I don't remember what year. I'm sure I've got the records of it, whether it was 6 years or 7 years, and then I've missed a couple. It's so well produced that I've used it as a symbol for other groups. And I'm actually having lunch with a lady from another Christian organization that was on my show last week. And so I was telling her about Grace. I said, you need to look into what they're doing. And there's a lot of great groups. I mean, as you know, I just did Cattle Barons Dallas over the weekend, and that's a ridiculously involved ordeal. I mean, it's that auction is like a company.
Yeah.
So, and that's all good, and they'll have their 2,000 or 3,000 people there. They're a one-off type organization. Mm-hmm. Yep. The great thing about that event was being finished that night and Saturday night, and the CEO of the American Cancer Society actually was in from Atlanta to watch the auction.
Wow.
So, he came over and we talked for a little bit, and that was really neat. And he had his pin on, his American Cancer pin. And I said, you know what? One of these days I'd like to get me one of those. And he pinned me with his pin, which I thought was pretty, it was kind of emotional for me.
Yeah.
But I take a lot of pride in my auctions. And I think people know that, and we do it as United Classic Auctioneers. We don't do it under our regular trade brand, which is United Real Estate, United Country Real Estate. United Classic Auctioneers is what it used to be Classic Auctioneers. And then I felt like we wanted to brand it with our mothership, so there was a blend there. But everyone matters to me. I don't take any of them for granted. And there's a bit of stress that comes with every one of them, because you know that you're waiting all year long for this one deal.
Yeah.
Now, you got other things going. You've got a capital campaign, and you've got a big budget, and you've got money coming in. Mm-hmm. I mean, but when you look at the opportunity of how much you can do, So when I first came on with you, and we were talking about it earlier, you said that the auction was bringing in around $40,000, something like that. I mean, I remember it was pretty small, but the production was so great, and then and then how you interact with your client, the people that you're helping, that is rarely seen that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You really, I mean, it's one thing to have somebody come on stage and everybody look at them, and it's another thing to go to the table with a microphone and a camera, and it's kind of like a woman behind the scenes, or you're a reporter talking to them, and I know you've had great support from Channel 5. They've been the MCs, and the last, as long as I can remember, I don't remember anybody else being involved, and but anyway, so you've got a lot of great support from the community. You got great support from the media, but tell me a little bit about the history of the auction, as far as kind of where, since you've been there. I mean, were you involved in the first one?
I was involved as a board member, so I joined the board prior to taking on the role of CEO. But yeah, it's always been a phenomenal event. And even as a board member, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is a big undertaking, knowing what I know from my experience in the nonprofit. But man, the volunteers that put it together, even that first year, 16 years ago, were really dedicated and phenomenal. So we've always had good support. And early on, we had great auction items that I think, because of the love our attendees had for Grace, probably went a little overvalue at the time. But then as the years kind of progressed, we got a lot of new items in, and we kind of went through a little plateau, which I think is pretty normal. But having you join us and having an amazing auction committee led by Linda Warner and Davine Miller, having them get out there and get some really unique and unusual items that really you can't get in other places, having them bring those to the table, which gives you the tools to then take it to the next level. So we're now hoping for about $90,000 on our live auction. And then, of course, you helped us launch a fund-to-need portion of our event that we brought in. I believe it was just under $40,000 last year, which is phenomenal. And again, that's just people who are moved to give and support the organization. So we're hoping for at least a repeat. And I think we've got some good packages for you to sell to our group. And we've got some great attendees that I truly believe will take advantage of the opportunity to give.
Well, and I think from the auctioneer's position, or from the professional's position, you just have to have the money in the seats. Yeah. You have to have the right people, getting the right people, and whether it's the sponsors that are in the seats or the sponsors driving people to come, it really matters. And when you only have to be missing 3 or 4 key players for your auction to be off 10% or 15%, no doubt. Yeah. And so everything matters. Everything matters. Why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the items that you're going to have in this year's auction? I know we met last week and went over the items, and but so we can just kind of share with the folks, because people are always asking me. I mean, every fundraising group says, "Well, what are the other people doing?" Yeah. Well, you can tell them, and that way they can figure it out for themselves.
Well, I don't know if I want to share my secrets, but no.
Well, the good thing is that what we've discovered, and I think you'll agree with this, it's really about experiences. Yeah. That's really what people want, and I always see that those are the things that bring the most. And if you can be unique in your experience to your particular group, what they like, or what they may enjoy, So go ahead. I'm going to let you kind of
I'll tell you, one of the things that we really try to highlight is this is a phenomenal evening. The food is wonderful. Gaylord does a great job. So we actually kick off our auction with what we call the Grace Fire and Ice specialty cocktails. So this is kind of a little bit unusual, but we have this phenomenal certified mixologist, Ryan Reed, who's created these 2 drinks. They're called Fire and Ice, and I think one is going to smoke and one is going to sparkle. I'm not quite sure. but they're beautiful drinks, and they're delivered to your table at the gala. And last year, when we did this for the first time, you sold those 2 drinks for $4,000. So this is a little bit more than just the cocktail. This is about being spotlighted and being a part of. So we're looking forward to doing that. We got 2 new drinks, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We do a dove hunt in Argentina that goes really well. This year we've got a retro arcade game, the big game that's got all the old type, back when we were meeting at the Pizza Hut or whatever. We've got one of those that we're going to put out there, which again is somewhat unique. You can't really
I think it's great.
find that.
Something different.
Yeah, we've got a couple of tickets on Holland America, a beautiful cruise, 7-day cruise. This next one is Cowboy Chef Newton. I don't know if you're familiar, but he was on the Iron Chef, Master Chef season 8. He's a local guy, but he has a phenomenal stage presence, so he'll be joining us. But he's going to give away a private dinner for 10 with him and all of, even at his ranch, I believe. And then we've got Fontainebleau in Miami with some American Airlines miles. The Gaylord is actually giving us a ultimate ice party where you and 8 people, or you and 7 guests, are going to have dinner at the steakhouse and then go to ice, their display out there as a VIP, and spend the night out at Gaylord. We've got this great sports fishing and golf combo at a place in Cabo called Red Rum. That is going to be a lot of fun to see who gets that. Corinthian Wellness Spa in South Lake has been a long-term supporter of ours, and they've got a beautiful package with Kristen Nightingale that I think will go very well, because there's a lot of women that are familiar with those procedures. But I think probably the 2 highlights for the night, we have 7 nights at the Banyan Tree in Mayakoba with American Airlines miles. So you'd be able to spend the 7 nights at this amazing facility. In fact, I just can't wait to see it, but there's a private rooftop swimming pool along with all the amenities there. So that one will be a lot of fun to see. BNSF is giving their rail car experience on their campus, which is phenomenal.
Let's talk about that one just a minute, because I used to sell this. I used to do an event years ago for a group called Communities in Schools. And it wasn't a big event. It was a relatively small event, but Ebby Halliday was behind it for several years, and Ross Perot was behind it. It was those types of people who would be the honorary chair. And but I remember selling the rail car experience, and this was before Berkshire Hathaway and Buffett bought them. And but I would only see it every once in a while. You wouldn't see it a lot. You'd see it a little bit. And now I see even less. So it's a really unique experience. And so kind of tell them, the folks, a little bit more about what it is. It's a vintage rail car.
Exactly.
And it's on the campus, which is located where? It's
over in the Alliance area.
Okay, yeah. Near the Alliance area, near the Alliance Airport area. And so they have this stationary car, but it is turn of the century. It's old, and it's been totally restored. It's a magnificent structure. I mean, you almost feel like you're in a movie set or a time gone by. And so you and how many?
16.
16. So 16 folks are going to get to go do a private dining experience in the dining car. So that's, I think it's one of the cooler things. Just because it's different, it's not something, and it's not that available.
Right. In fact, we've been so blessed, so many great people involved at Grace, but Matt and Lisa Rose have been volunteers and supporters, and of course Matt has retired, but Carl, who is the new CEO over there, actually won one of our cars at a gala years ago before he was CEO of BNSF. But so we've got a few tie-ins there, and right now our board president is Paul Bischler, who also is an executive over at BNSF. So we're kind of tied in, and I certainly appreciate their support, but they really aren't giving away that experience very often, and if they do, it's usually just for 8 people. But Paul and Carl kind of helped us out there by getting us for 16, and it is something I have yet to go. Every year we sell it, I keep telling the winner, I'm available. And I've yet to get my invitation, but it does, from everything I've seen, pictures and other people who have done it say it's really an experience you want to try to get to.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, tell me what else
You know, I think the other big highlight, and this is new to us this year, is a golf cart. Grapevine golf cars have been incredibly generous by giving us a 4-passenger Easy Geo PTV. And we've got it all wrapped up with gala logos, and it'll be there that night. I think we've got a lot of folks that are in the audience that live out at the Vaquero area, and so they like driving around in those golf carts, and of course golfers. So I'm really hopeful that that'll go well as well.
I think it will.
Yeah.
Tell the folks when we talk about grace, how far out do we go outside of Grapevine Central?
We really don't have geographic boundaries. The reality is, if someone called us from, southeast Dallas, we would probably try to help them find a location to get food closer to them. It makes no sense to drive all that way. But if they show up on our doorstep, it doesn't matter where they're from. We're gonna share whatever we can. Our philosophy is sometimes a little different than a lot of other organizations in that we recognize how much incredible courage you must have to muster to walk in the door and ask someone for something as basic as food. So therefore, our from the minute you walk in, our intake specialists, our case managers, truly honor that the sacrifice that people are having to make by coming in and doing that. So we're not going to turn someone away because of a different zip code or even income. We're pretty flexible on income levels. We shoot for about 150% of poverty level, and that's kind of where most of our families are coming in. But the reality is, you may have made a decent salary last year and still are at a point where you can't put food on the table. So we've been very blessed by our community. The community gives us enough that we're able to meet the need of those that show up on our door. So even though we really have most of our clients in Northeast Tarrant County, we have several, especially for our medical clinic, because there just isn't access to any other charitable care. If they're not certified in one of the county healthcare systems, we're pretty much it. We're the medical home for people who have access to no other healthcare. So again, geographic boundaries are arbitrary. We'll serve as many as we can for as long as we can, and as long as the community will continue to support that.
Sure. Well, you're blessed that you are in Grapevine, Texas, too, because you've got Grapevine, South Lake, that whole area, Flower Mound, everything around the DFW airport. It's just always growing. There's always something going on. Grapevine has one of the most vital downtowns I've ever seen. I grew up in the 60s where I would go to Grapevine with my uncle, who drove a welding truck, and Grapevine was on his route. And so we would leave Gainesville and go to Louisville and then work our way down to Grapevine. There was no South Lake. Right. South Lake didn't exist. Colleyville was, might have been maybe a county road, but there was not one business all the way to the Texas Motor Speedway except for one welding shop, and that was a 2-lane road. And I can still remember being at the mill in downtown Grapevine, and we would call on that. So that's how I spent a lot of my summers. But I mean, Grapevine has been so great about keeping the look and the feel. And I know that a lot of people that are trying to develop and build things, they have a hard time with code, and they have a hard time with planning and management. I know, some cities they just tear everything down, and to their own demise. Now, Grapevine has not done that. They're very good about taking care of their historic buildings and keeping the look and the feel. And I think that will benefit them forever, because when they have the wine event, or when they have whatever they're having. I mean, I drove through there, yesterday or the day before. I drove through Grapevine, and it was vital. I mean, it was active. There were people everywhere. The parking lots were full. The street was full, and that says a lot about them. That says a lot about a town and a city. And so you couldn't be in a better place, I don't think. But then people forget about the needs, and they forget about the fact that Texas is always growing, and we have all this influx of different ethnicities and just the different lifestyles, And so then when you look at, you can look at a city and it looks very pretty. Yeah. And they're building a new building on every corner. But you don't have to go but 3 blocks to find out that it's not all that way. Right. And so...
Well, the reality is, and I'm sure you know this, 80% of U.S. citizens have less than $2,000 in savings. I mean, 80%. So most of the families that we deal with are maybe not chronically poor or impoverished. These are working class, hard working people that have experienced something unexpected. The car broke down, a medical bill, and those small little crises can spiral very quickly if you don't have that kind of cushion. We call it the lack of slack in your budget. If there's something that comes up and you don't have enough slack in your budget to meet that crisis, it can spiral very quickly.
So if someone wanted to help, if somebody wanted to donate, if they wanted to make a donation, or if they wanted to pledge on a regular basis to help Grace, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, I'd love to have them visit our website, which is gracegratevine.org. You can click there to be linked to our gracegala.org site, which is, of course, the event on Saturday. We'd love to have people there. I think Wednesdays are cut off, so if you can get a ticket today, that would be great. If not, we can even we actually have set it up to do absentee bidders because our silent auction is on mobile. So if you email us, we can get you a link to be able to bid, even if you're not at the event. But of course, on our main page, there is a Donate Now section that you can contribute financially. But I'll tell you, we need all the financial donors we can get, that's for darn sure. But Grace sustains on in-kind and the talent and the time. We have literally 5,000 plus volunteers a year that support our organization in a variety of different levels, from the volunteer case manager who comes in every week and sits and works with clients, through our board of directors are volunteers. We have our medical staff is completely volunteers. All the doctors, physicians, specialists are all volunteers. So there's a lot of need, and I'll be real honest with you, I have yet to come across someone who says, I really believe in your mission and I want to do whatever I can. I've yet to meet that person that we can't find a good connection. It might take us a little bit to figure out what your gifts are and what you're willing to contribute, but we've got some phenomenal staff who are pretty skilled at that, being able to understand what you've got in terms of time and talent and resources and connect that to our mission.
So how much is a ticket to the gala?
The tickets individually are $375. You can buy a table of 10 for $3,500, and of course our sponsorship levels go up from there.
Do you want to drop some names on sponsors this year? People that have made some corporate sponsorships.
Sure. This is, I believe, our 12th year of having the Ken Thompson Group at Classic Chevrolet as our title sponsor. And if you have yet to meet Ken Thompson, that is a gentleman you want to swing by and meet. He is so phenomenal. And of course, Tom Durant and Susan Durant are amazing, but they've been long-term supporters, even outside of the gala. They do a phenomenal financial gift, but they're just kind of always there. In fact, a lot of our clients we take over there if they've got a car that they need to be either worked on or replaced, and they do a great job. We also have Scott Simmons Homes, has been a second year sponsor of our VIP party, and he's amazing, really generous heart. And then Berkey's, which is air conditioning, plumbing, and electric. They do all of our properties and are a sponsor of the gala. And this year we've got Atmos Energy is going to be, actually not just this year, they were last year and in previous years. And they do not just the financial donations to the gala, but we're actually working with them on being able to access their charitable utility assistance. So when our families are coming in with issues, we can maybe help pay an Atmos bill through that funding.
Well,
so
we always have to do a shout out to Atmos, because when I say we, I'm talking about United Real Estate and the United Real Estate brands. We are located in the Atmos Energy Building, which is Building 3 here at Lincoln Center. So,
and you know what? Next year's gala chair is Vic and Tina DiVincenzo, and Vic is upstairs. He's an executive at Atmos right now. So I tried calling him down here, but he was a little busy. I think after the storms, they're probably a little busy today.
I think people would be mad if he was down here.
I suppose so.
What's he doing down there? I don't have any electricity, no power. Well, you've given them the website. We've told them about the gala. We've told them about the mission, the vision, and the cause, and what you do. We've told them about you. I think you've said everything there is to say.
I guess so. Yeah.
All right. So tell them the website one more time.
Sure. It's gracegrapevine.org, all one word.
Mm-hmm.
And then our website for the gala event is gracegala.org.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you being on,
Thank you for having me.
And you actually did it on short notice, and but you know what? Sometimes those are the best shows.
Yeah,
so, Shonda Schaefer with Grace, we appreciate you being with us today very
Thank you for
much,
having me.
and I feel very blessed to be a part of Grace.
We look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
I'll be there. So, on behalf of everybody that's a part of this one, from Travis, our producer, to everyone on our staff, we thank you for being a part of the Mike McGavel Jones Show here at Lincoln Center in Dallas, Texas. And until the next time, we bid you adieu.